Morning, Coach.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my light on. We don't have class Friday. Is that about right?
Right, you get to do your test Friday.
That's what I figured. I'm actually going to leave early, take my test with me.
Make sure you have your book and your study guide and
Yeah,
all
I'm gonna
that
take
good
it.
stuff.
I'm gonna take it with me, and it's a 4 hour drive. So
Think you can get it done in that 4 hours? You don't get car sick, do you?
no,
I can't work in the car.
I'm not the one driving. I wish I could drive.
Well, I don't want you driving and doing a theory test.
I can't. I have seizures. I can't drive.
I know, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to text and drive.
That's not good either.
One last spring break. Remember when COVID first hit and we got like 2 weeks out for spring break?
Yeah.
Uh, I was out. I went to my grandparents for spring break because y'all were supposed to go to Hungary, and I was going, and I wasn't going to get to go either way. So I went to my grandparents, and I ended up staying at Memo and Granddaddy's for like 3 weeks. So that was like a double bonus for me. So Paul was wanting me to hang out, and I'm like, I'm in Alabama, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm texting and driving," and I was on my 4 wheeler, and he goes, "No, you're not." And so I sent him a video. I said, "Told you."
I don't think that's safe either. Even if
Well,
it's
I wasn't going like on a main road. I was just in the yard. I just went like 10 feet.
All right. So is everybody excited for spring break?
Oh yeah,
Ready for it?
going to see my kids. Apparently, I'm the only one.
Everybody else is asleep, I believe. All right, I'm trying to switch screens here and do some things.
Hey,
There we
Coach.
go. Yes.
I don't know if I was the only one yesterday, and this is more of an I don't know if it's internet on my part or if it's the school website, but I was trying to turn stuff in for theory and ear training, and it took me like 10 tries to submit it.
Huh. You should call help desk, or you can text, email, call.
Okay,
When you go to the website, if you just search help desk,
yes, ma'am.
they can help you if you're having problems like that. Yeah.
When I submitted it, it said, "Please add a file to submit. Please add a file to submit." There's a file on there. Submit
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you need to contact them, yeah, to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
And anytime you submit something, you should get an email that says it was successfully submitted.
Well, I always get the email once it's submitted, but like, I take the picture, scan it, add the file, and then submit. That's how I always do it. Well, I had done all that, and then when every time I would click submit, it would say, please add something. Please add, like there was nothing there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. Yeah. But just anytime you're having trouble with that, help desk is person you need to, the
Yes, ma'am.
people
Miss
you need to
Peggy?
contact. Yes.
Um, I'm pretty sure I did most of it right on the homework, but I'm just wondering how many points would I get taken off if I forgot to put parentheses around all my non-chord tones?
Ah.
I'm sorry.
That was a Peggy answer.
That was the whole thing, to add non-chord tones.
No, I put all my non-chord tones. I just forgot to put like parentheses around them to
Did you
like.
label them as passing tone or
Yeah, they're all
suspension?
labeled.
Oh,
It's just I
okay.
don't have parentheses around them.
Well, let's look at the homework. That's what I was going to do first today.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Cody, you want to start us out since your microphone's on? Let's look at the first one and tell me one place you could add either a suspension or another non-chord tone. And what, if you have your homework handy there, you can tell me what you did.
What if I didn't do the homework? I'm just kidding. um,
Y'all are testing me today.
are you awake?
I'm awake. I don't like to hear this bad news.
Could you put one on this? God, this one's hard. On that C,
Which C? There's a C.
treble,
The first one or the second one?
the first one.
Okay, what would you do to it?
All right, can I just tell you what I have written for number one, and then just see if you agree? Okay.
Just tell me one, so I'll give somebody else a chance.
All right. So in the treble clef, I left that C alone and I left that F alone. I left it like it was, and then in
Okay.
the bass clef, I left the A sharp alone on that first measure. I left everything alone in the first measure, and then in the second measure, I broke up that there's two quarter notes and the eighth notes.
Which two? I mean, which?
And
Tell
the
me
treble
which note.
clef, I'm sorry.
Which
The
note?
top two quarter notes.
Okay. Both of them or just one?
Just both of them. And I made them all four. I had 4 eighth notes.
What letters are they?
I have C, B, C, B.
Okay, let's go with the first CB.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
All right, so he's saying to change the second beat into a C and a B,
Yes, ma'am.
eighth notes. You're right. Make this bigger.
This is hard enough for me to write.
It's hard for me too. They use such small staffs in their books. So your soprano would look something like that.
Yes, ma'am. I have exactly that.
Good. So that's one step.
And then also in the treble clef, I have.
Wait.
I'm
We got to label it. We got to
I'm
label it.
sorry.
So the C is your non-chord tone because it's not in the chord on that beat.
Yes, ma'am.
And what kind of non-chord tone is it?
Is it a passing?
No, you look at the note before it. Even though it's a different measure, it was same note and then it stepped down. What's the same note step down?
Same note, step down. Suspension?
Yes. So is it 2, 3, 4, 3, 7, 6, or 9, 8? To get
2,
that,
3.
you count from the bottom B to that C.
Is it 2, 3?
If it's 2, 3, it has to be in the bass. This one's in
Oh,
the
so it's
soprano.
4, 3.
B to C is a ninth. You think B
B
to
to
C
C is 2.
yeah, it is, but that only occurs in the bass.
Oh.
And it
okay.
really creates a ninth. So that is what we would call a 9/8 suspension. I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
that one is tricky, but just don't use 2, 3 unless it's in the bass, the literal bass voice.
That's gonna shoot me hard.
Okay, Sarah, tell me what other non-chord tone you could put in that first example.
In the last measure, I kept everything else the same on the second measure. And then on the third measure, I have A sharp and soprano, and then I have D to C half notes in the alto, and then F in the bass.
Half notes?
Or not half notes, I'm sorry, eighth notes. I don't know why I
Okay, I'll take that. Now, I'm not
I
writing
did a passing.
half a beat, right?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
I was about to say, where are you getting a half note from?
I thought that's what she meant, but I wanted to make sure she's not putting half notes because you divide it into half. Yes. Okay. So I'm just not taking the time to fill in all the notes, but on that beat. So what did you call this?
It was passing.
Right. So that one would be an accented passing tone because it occurs on the beat. If you had put a passing tone, let me just see if I can draw it up here, on that beat and made those two eighth notes, that would be an unaccented passing tone. It's coming. There it goes. And either one would be correct. Remember, on these, there are different choices. Now, the one that Cody did was really the only place for a suspension in this one,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
you look for a step down. So that worked. And remember, you have to push the suspension over to the next beat like that. So that's correct. But on passing tones, either place would work. And I'm glad you put it there. You could also, if you look at the music, you know, between those first two alto notes, there's room for a passing tone there. Okay.
Miss Hinkle, can you let Catherine in? I think she's in the waiting room.
I did. Yeah, she's coming.
Okay.
All right. Let's look at number 2. Jacob, can you give me one for number 2? Example number 2, give me one of your non-chord tones that you put in.
Yeah, so let's see here.
Just tell me which
voice
and
which one you change.
Oh,
I'm getting
sorry.
Would that be an alto? Or sorry, A to C sharp, G sharp. My bad.
Hey, coach, we're seeing your
I know.
I know.
I'm having
Wait,
problems.
I'm having problems.
Would it be A to G sharp in the alto?
Okay, so
yeah.
sorry.
Wait, what's happening?
I don't
I don't know if you can hear it. I'm hearing all this echo. Is it
doing that to you all as well?
Now it's not. It was.
It's when Jacob's unmuted.
Ah, it's Jacob's fault.
fault?
Yeah, it's always me.
All right.
All right.
So
I'm not going to talk.
You tell
me
which
notes to change.
I had A to G sharp in the alto for neighboring. Yes.
Good. That's a good place. Mm-hmm.
No, it's not doing it.
So it seems like when Jacob unmutes, it messes mine up. I don't know. But he found 2 notes that are the same and added a neighboring tone between them. And I hope you change those to quarter notes because I know you're a percussionist and you know rhythm. So, all right.
This is true.
Katie, can you tell me another non-chord tone that you could add in that example?
I actually probably should not. I am driving right now. If you'll circle back to me, I am 8 minutes away from campus.
Okay, sorry about that.
So I'm sorry, I should be driving in a Zoom class.
It's okay. Caitlin,
Hello.
hi.
So I did it in the soprano. I went from B to C.
Like, let me circle it. This right here,
Yes.
C to B. So what did you do? What did you change?
I just changed it into an eighth note. So I went like, there was a quarter note in that first measure, and then the second measure, I just went C and then B as a eighth note.
So you changed the C into 2 eighth notes. I can't get it in that measure, but like this.
No, so it's hard to see. It'd be better if we were in person. This would help if we were in person.
Oh, I know. Tell me which measure, which beat, and what did you change it to?
So the second measure, the first beat, I changed it to an eighth note.
Eighth note C.
Eighth note C to B.
Okay. If you change that to an eighth note, then you're going to change that B to a dotted quarter.
Oh, okay.
Make sure your math adds up, because it was a half note, so it has to change into something that adds up to that. You could also make it 2 quarter notes, but the eighth note dotted quarter would work because it still would equal. So instead of just going, I don't have that. So here's the soprano alto. And so on. So here's a tricky one. You might encounter this on the test. If she does that, it fits the qualification of same note step down, but then when we start to count the intervals from that E to C is what number? What interval?
6.
Yeah. So then 6, 5. That's not one of our usual suspension numbers, is it? Because remember that fifth, how open it sounds over the bass? So is not the best choice for a suspension. Although everything else worked, the notes are right, the spot as far as step down, yeah, it does qualify for that. But then when you start to figure out, is it 4/3, is it 7/6, 9/8, or 2/3, it doesn't fit any of those.
Could you do the eighth note between the first note and the second measure up to the E? So like B to C.
Say that again. B to C.
Yeah, so like in the second measure, that very first note, like pretend it's still a half note, change that into the whatever it was called, the dotted quarter note or dotted eighth note, and go from like B to C and then to E.
No, because it has to be step, and E.
Oh, okay.
B to C is a step, but C to E is not. And we'll get to those non-chord tones in the next chapter, but we haven't had them yet. So really, this place was a step down, but the intervals didn't work out. So this one is the only other step down, I believe, in this whole music, in this whole example. So if you just do that same thing right there, I'm going to write it down here so I can. So instead of half note D, quarter note C, I'm going to change that third beat into D, C, And now this one is not in the chord. And when you count from the A bass note, so our bass note is A at this point, A to D, A, B, C, D, that's just a fourth. So 4/3 is one of our legitimate suspensions. I'm glad you did that so we could point out if it's not one of those four that you've had, stay away from it. Yeah, use 4/3, 9/8, 7/6, or 2/3 when it occurs in the bass. All right. Anybody else do any differences, non-chord tones on that one?
I did a passing in the bass on the second measure.
Between the E and the C?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also have a question. I think it also makes a 6/5, but I did a suspension in the alto, and that half note, I just broke it into 2 quarter notes in the second measure.
So you pushed the A over to the next measure.
Yes.
And made it A down to G. Right?
Yeah. Is that
so
wrong?
How far your bass note at that point is E? How far is it E to A?
4. Oh, it's a 4/3. Oh, okay. I labeled it wrong. Oh,
Yep.
okay.
4/3. All right. Yeah, you could put passing tones anytime there's a third apart. So I was trying to do the eraser.
Do Matt.
For
Do
notes,
in red ink.
notes a third apart, like there, you could put a passing tone. You could put a passing tone there. That's about it. But Jacob's neighboring tone also worked. All right. Noah.
Hi.
What's a good non-chord tone that you could add to number 3?
Ooh, well,
That's a
I'm not
good
entirely.
question.
Gosh, I accidentally muted myself. I'm so sorry. I'm not 100% sure this is right, but I tried to put a 2/3 suspension in the bass
That's a good
between
choice.
the or the second chord and the third chord.
Okay. Which measure and which note did you change?
First measure, second, well, actually, no, so sorry. Second measure, first chord,
Okay.
in the bass.
So you put a C on the first beat?
Yes.
You don't sound too sure.
I'm never sure about anything. Y'all should know this by now.
And then your second beat was a
Second beat was a B.
right. And you changed that half note into 2 quarter notes. Right? Say
Sure.
yes. All right. And I heard you say that was a 2/3 suspension, right? And you're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, good. Because it's in the bass. It's going to be a 2/3 suspension because it creates a second somewhere. If I put a C in this measure, the C to D that's happening in the soprano is a second. And when it goes to the B, B to D is a third. So it creates that dissonance at some place. All right. Rebecca, what other non-chord tone did you do?
I added a passing tone in the first measure on the soprano. I added an A, eighth note in between the B and the G.
So you want to put an eighth note A.
And then turn the G into an eighth note.
If we do that, we don't have enough beats in that measure.
No, I mean leave the A as a half note and then turn the G into an eighth note and then add another and then add an A eighth.
I'm not sure what you're saying. All right, so
Not either.
B flat half note you didn't change.
Yes.
So tell me what else you have in that measure. You have an A and a G.
Yes.
Okay. But they're not eighth notes, or they shouldn't be, because that would only give you 3 beats in that measure.
You're right. Yeah, sorry, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So just take whatever note you're replacing, like the G, and cut it in half. Or, you could do like, I think it was Caitlin said, do a eighth note dotted quarter, that would work as well. But your math still has to add up to 4, or whatever time signature you're in.
That's one thing I'm bad at is math, so this is where it gets me.
So that, yes, you're right. That was a passing tone. Passing tones are the easiest one. There's one I wanted to point out in here, though. Look at that. You've got D to F sharp. Good place for a passing tone, right? Did anybody do that one? Maybe not. Okay, this is one of those that would be really tricky. If you will play through it, it will help. And I think you'll catch. What interval is E flat to F sharp?
A second.
What kind of
Kind of
second?
second.
Diminished.
Augmented.
Augmented, yes. It's one of those bad ones. Augmented seconds. And remember from last chapter, all those millions of rules that we learned, when you have an ascending line in a soprano or the bass, you have to use the melodic minor scale. So if you put an E natural in there, that would work. That one's a tricky one. All right. Catherine, give me a good non-chord tone for example 4 there.
Alrighty. Do you want me to say my suspension or just my non-chord tone
Let's do
in
the
general?
suspension first, because that way you know not to put your other non-chord tone on the same beat.
Okay. I did mine in the soprano line in the first measure, and I made the first C a half note and then made it go from C to B flat and quarter notes.
Good. And what kind of suspension is that?
7/6.
Good. Yes, because you count from that D bass note. D to C is a seventh. So that makes that a 7/6 suspension. Good. All right, Justin, what other non-chord tone could you put in that one?
Did you say Justin?
Yes.
Okay. Eesh. Already put the passing in there, so I can't do
No,
that.
we put a suspension.
Oh. Could you put another suspension?
Well, I think the direction said one other non-chord tone.
I know, but you have another. You have another.
You could, yeah. Where?
Between the 1 and the 5/6 in the bass.
Mm-hmm. So what did you change into what?
Okay, so I did. I didn't actually do that on my homework. I did that measure, but I didn't do that for that example. So,
So
um,
he's found a good place for a suspension. So in case some of you did this one, remember, always push the suspension over to the strong beat.
right.
So you're right. When I grade these, I'm just going to let you know, I look for three things. Did you find a good place that it could go? You know, is it appropriate? Is this a step down that we could put a suspension? Yes. Number two, did you label it correctly? So when you label it, did you give it the appropriate numerals?
Mhm.
And then number three, did you get the rhythms right? So that half note changed into 2/4. And what kind of suspension is that since it's the bass?
It's a 2/3.
Yep.
But that's the only non-chord tone that I could find in that, because nothing is a third apart or
In the soprano, G to B, you could put a passing tone in there.
oh.
Just change either the G into 2/4, or you could change the B and A into 2/4. Passing tones are more flexible.
Yeah.
That's probably the only, oh, you could put descending passing tone right here. I didn't even notice that one. Change that one into 2/4.
Could you put a retardation on in the bass on the second measure?
Right. So that D to E flat. Let me erase some of my markings here. We've got to step up. So what we would do is, again, push the retardation over to the next beat, the next strong beat. Whoops, that needs to be a D. Been doing too many. And change those into coordinates. So that would be a retardation, like that. Just remember, try not to put your non-chord tones in the same beat. It just kind of destroys the harmony. All right, questions on those? Because there are lots of different answers. If you did not put this, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. But if you have a question about one, let's look at it and see if it's something that would work. So anytime you have two notes that are the same note, let's look at this line. We could look at the measure here where you have two B flats. There's a good place for a neighboring tone. So you could step down, make that into eighth notes, and then label it as a neighbor. So anytime there's a same note, here's one where the altos are staying on F. So that one was an upper neighbor. Look for a third apart, and you can put passing tones. Look, we could put in between here. We could put them in between here. We could put them in between here. So if they're a third apart, good places for passing tones. Just change your beats into eighth notes. You don't generally put non-chord tones after the fermata, but I would not count off for that because they haven't told you that yet. But just that chord is held. And then for suspensions, you look for a step down. Retardations, look for a step up. So here's a good place. Well, that would turn into a 6/5. That one's not a good place. Between these two. So we would turn this into a C and a B flat and make those eighth notes 4/3 suspension. Questions? All right, let's look at our study guide.
Did you let me back in or did I break in?
I didn't know you went away.
It kicked me out and I guess I just broke back in.
Maybe because you were in at one time, it let you back in.
It let me in and I just was kicked out and I guess I just broke back in. Wow.
I have a question about neighboring tones, because I know we used one in there.
Uh-huh.
So are they I know they're not a passing tone, so I'm not trying to sound dumb here, but are they basically like acting like they're passing through those two neighbor tones? Could you understand it that way, or
Well, it comes back to the same note.
yeah?
That's the difference.
Okay.
Let me go back to my other screen.
Sorry.
See, so here, where I was just saying you'd add neighboring tones, see how it went F, G, F. It went
Uh-huh.
next door and came back home. That's
Right.
how you remember neighbor. Or this one went from B flat to A and back to B flat. Passing tones, though, don't come back to the same one. They just keep going the same direction,
Right.
but they're all just stepwise motion.
Okay.
If you'll notice, all the NCTs that we've had so far have been stepwise motion or same note, no leaps. We'll cover those in the next chapter. All right. So if you get notifications from Brightspace, I apologize because I kept thinking of things this morning I wanted to add to the study guide. And I kept updating and updating. All right. What is an NCT?
Non-chord tone.
Non-chord tone.
I said it, non-chord tone.
No note that's not in the chord at that point, at that beat.
Do you want I'm sorry. I was going to ask a question. On this test, are you going to have terms?
Yes.
All right. So this is my other question. So if this is like, let's say if you have it written like this, okay? NCT, if we just say non-chord tone, do you want that as the answer? Or do you want, what is that? What is a non-chord tone?
Well, you have some of both.
Okay.
You need to know.
I want to get full credit.
Yeah. The definition of a non-chord tone is a note that's not in the chord at that point. That's why we
Yes,
have to do the Roman numerals to know what chord we're on.
It's kind of like if you ask me like, what's an ER? Is it the emergency room? Well, what's the emergency room?
All right. But you can use the abbreviation NCT, but I want you to know what that is.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
All right. So here are the different types of NCTs, non-chord tones. Passing tone is approach by step, left by step in the same direction. So it's going by step, step. And they can be ascending or descending, moving up or moving down. Neighboring tones, they're approached by step, left by step in the opposite direction. So if it steps down, then it steps back up. Or if it steps up, then it steps back down. And you can have an upper neighbor or a lower neighbor. You're living in an apartment and the guys upstairs are your upper neighbors and the neighbors below are your lower neighbors. Those are terms we apply to neighboring tones. Retardation is approached by the same note and left by a step up. So once you've circled your non-chord tone and you say, which one is it? Look at the note before it and the note after it in the same voice. Then the suspension, as you know, is approached by the same note and left by a step down. Think you're suspending something and let it go, it drops. And those are labeled not with an S, but with the numerals that come from the interval from the bass to that non-chord tone that you've just identified. So 4-3, 7-6, 9-8, 2-3 if it's in the bass. 2-3 will always be in the bass. Some of these terms you've already had before, but they also apply to non-chord tones. Diatonic means in the key. Not in the chord, but it's still in the key. And chromatic is not in the key, so it would have an accidental beside it, whether it's sharp, flat, or natural. accented and unaccented can apply to any of them. Accented means that it's on a strong beat or a strong part of the beat. So if it's eighth notes, it would be the first eighth note. If it's just maybe half notes, an accented one would be on 1 or 3. Unaccented would be on a weaker beat or weaker part of the beat. So in half notes, it would be on 2 and 4. Or if you're in eighth notes, it might be on the second eighth note of the group. Now, this term, arpeggiation, remember we added some arpeggiations there at the beginning of the chapter. That one's tricky because they put it in this chapter and it's not a non-chord tone, if that makes any sense. I know that's a double negative, but an arpeggiation is a chord tone, and an arpeggiation is in the chord, but it's when you move to another note of the chord. Just think of arpeggios, that, you know, that term, just broken chords. And some of you have played those in piano or whatever your instrument is. But arpeggiation, it's a type of embellishment, but it's a note that's in the chord. All right, so some other hints I've thought of to remind you of. When you're analyzing chords, stay away from seventh chords except for 5/7 for now anyway, because you'll miss some non-chord tones if you try to say, oh, that's a 4 major 7 and that's a 7 half diminished 7. Yeah, those occur.
Why do 5/7s have the exception there?
Because that's the one that's most common.
Okay.
Yeah. Always compare notes in the same voice. So if you identified a note and you say, this is a non-chord tone, I've got to figure out what it is, and say it's an alto note, you got to look at the note before in the alto and the note after in the alto. And it doesn't matter if it's a different measure. You know, it could be the same measure, it could be a different measure, but you go to the same voice. That's the trick. Don't switch to soprano or any other voice. Okay, this is from our last time where we started adding these non-chord tones. And I think we've talked about this quite a bit already today. Look for 2 notes that are a third apart to add a passing tone. 2 notes that are the same to add a neighboring tone. Look for a step up to add a retardation and a step down to add a suspension. Embellishments on the weak beats, and back in the beginning of this chapter, we did this, adding passing tones in our arpeggiations, in our counterpoint, and you'll have some of that on the test. And embellishments on the strong beats would be suspensions. So here's kind of what's on your test. You do have definitions. Yes, Cody. You have one line to analyze, where you analyze with Roman numerals and label the NCTs. And I pointed out which one example from your textbook this would be like in test 12-2 on page 203. And then where we added embellishments, this is also on 203. I think last class maybe was where we did that one. And then one line of embellishing the counterpoint. Look at that one again, page 194. We did this in class. And of course, as always, you still got to remember to use the things that you've learned in the past, and mostly chapter 11 is important. Now your homework is on Brightspace. It's 1 page, the NCT worksheet. It's under content, and I'm pulling it up here. Okay, just the 1 page. You're going to do Roman numeral analysis and find any NCTs. They kind of go hand in hand. You can't do one without, I mean, you could do Roman numeral analysis without, but it's going to be confusing. Remember 2 rules when you have several notes and you can't decide which one's in the chord and which one's not. If it's a longer note or a repeated note, it's more important. So longer notes, repeated notes are more important. So we start out, make sure you give the key. I'm going to help you with this first one. So we're in D major. Hopefully you knew that right away. 2 sharps. We do our Roman numerals. Make sure that you use the correct quality. Indicate major if it's major, minor if it's minor, diminished, and so on. Use figured bass if appropriate. If it's an inversion, like a number 3, you'd put a 1/6. Label any notes that are not in the chord. So on blank 4 there, it's a 4 chord, it's a G major chord. But I see that F sharp is not in that chord. What kind of non-chord tone is that?
Passing?
Passing, yes. You look at the note before and the note
We all
after.
answered at the same time.
I was afraid nobody was going to answer. I'm like, oh my gosh, they can't find passing tones. All right.
I still can't find direct fifths and parallel fifths, so they're fine.
Oh, I was muted. I said passing. I was like, passing? Oh, I'm muted.
Let's do number 5 together. That one's kind of tricky.
Wait, coach.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll do 5. I was like, are you not doing 2 or never
I
mind?
was going to see if you all could figure it out.
Oh, okay.
Number 5 is harder.
Okay. So we have
You've got
a
an A in the bass. You've got an E and a D in the tenor,
D.
a D in the alto, and an A in the soprano. What kind of chord is that? A, E, D, D, A. It does not spell any kind of chord.
It's not a
Well, it
chord.
should be a DFA, but E's not in the chord, so
And you don't have an F. So
yeah.
You don't have that third to make quality.
Yeah, we can't make ACE and we can't make DFA.
But you gotta call it something.
Did they put like a passing tone between the F and the D already?
Oh, your F is over here in left field in the. No.
All right, you're using the Cody illustration. F is
Oh
in left
no,
field.
he's conforming.
What's that supposed to mean?
Start talking sports. I don't know what you're saying here.
No, I'm being serious. I'm being 100% serious.
Okay. You've got to call it something.
All right. In all
It's
seriousness,
nothing.
we don't have a C, so we can't use ACE, and we don't have an F, so we can't use DFA because we only have an E.
But you have to. So here's the way you do
Retardation?
it. Repeated notes and longer notes are more important. So the A is repeated. We're going to keep it.
And the D's repeated,
And the
so, we
D's
keep it, so
repeated.
we're going to use DFA, and E's not in the chord.
The F is omitted. Remember, in most chords that are incomplete, the 5th is omitted. In this case, they left out the F. It's going to come back over here, isn't it? Justin says it's in left field. Yeah, it's over there somewhere.
Have you not ever heard that term?
Yes, I have. So if we call this a DFA chord with the F left out, what
That's
number
not
is
a
that?
chord. That's 2 notes played together simultaneously.
I'll play it in a minute and you can hear it. It doesn't sound bad. So what chord is that in this key?
That's a 1.
It's a 1. What else?
A
Do I just write
1.
1 and I'm finished?
A 1 6 4.
6 4.
There we go.
So that means this note didn't fit in our chord, so that means we got to circle it.
Okay. Now I'm okay.
So what would we call that?
An arpeggiation?
A note?
Look at the note before it and the note after it.
Would it be a passing?
Passing, yes.
Huh.
Now, the difference is the first passing tone was on the second eighth note, so it's called an unaccented passing tone. This one's on the first eighth note. It's called an accented passing tone. So passing tones can occur on the second eighth note or the first eighth note. Doesn't matter. All right. So this sounds like If I can get
What about
So see, that didn't stick out to say. It creates a little dissonance there with that non-chord tone. That E is not in the chord, but that D is in the chord. And
It's such a peaceful sounding song for the song title.
No,
Did that- did
heard
that,
you say that. All men must die. I was like, what?
another thing I want to remind you of, because we haven't done this in a while, when you have the same chord, same inversion, you can just do this little dash shortcut. And that's
There's a lot of passing tones in that.
2. So far.
How many do we need?
I'm not giving you a number. Okay. You notice on the second system that ANT that's marked there, I marked that for you because that's a non-chord tone that you'll have in the next chapter. It's called an anticipation. And you haven't had that yet, so I marked that one for you. But this is your homework to finish this page. And your online quiz, of course, is due tomorrow night as well. All right. Any questions? All right. So Friday is your test. I won't see you on Friday. So have a good spring break and soak up some of the sun and rest a little.
Thank you.
At
least we
You as well.
Mark.
Thanks.
Let's hope and pray we don't forget any of this stuff over.
Please don't.
I don't know what it is about school breaks, but it just makes you forget everything.
Yeah, because you
Well,
don't think
you
about it
relax,
for
you go
about
do
10 days.
You relax and you go do a bunch of stuff and you come back to work and you're just like, all right, back to day one.
Yeah. Yep. I know what you
That's what I was just saying. At least we get a spring break. My oldest one goes to Auburn. They don't get one.
Ugh.
My little sister goes to Sanford. They don't get one.
I'm glad we get a spring break.
Yeah, at least we get that.
All right. See you all in a
I'll see you in a
week or
few
so.
hours, Coach.
Oh, that too.
You got football practice.
Yeah. See ya.
See ya.